The criminal world of One Piece. One Piece is a very long story with a massive world, with so much to explore and know about. It is in my opinion one of the best stories in terms of world building in at least the last decades. There's an established world with dozens upon dozens of islands that all have political systems with geopolitical impact that is often even relevant for the story. Most readers obviously know the two main conflicting powers in the world of One Piece, which are the world government, which incorporates the Marines, and the second fraction, being pirates. Because One Piece is a story about pirates. But over the multiple decades that the series is already ongoing, we learned way more about the complexity that this world has to offer. It is not at all black and white in this fictional universe, and there are multiple criminal organizations that all have their own backgrounds and storylines. Some of them being explored in depth throughout the story and some barely being mentioned. We will uncover all of the known criminal organizations of the One Piece world today in this video. And I believe even seasoned fans will be surprised how many there actually are. First up, we have to get the main group out of the way to even talk about all the other groups, which obviously is the pirates. Pirates make up the majority of criminals in the world of One Piece, and since the execution of Gold D. Roger, the new age of piracy arrived, making even more people convert to the life of piracy, because they are after this big treasure, the One Piece itself. This group of criminals is not only huge, but does not restrict themselves to any particular crime. Pirates follow vastly different goals, and their moral compass differs from group to group. A lot of organizations we are gonna talk about in this video are also considered pirates, but they do not really follow the standard pirate trend of sailing the seas and looking for treasure. They are only really labeled as pirates because that's what the story is about, so be aware of that. The most well-known members of this particular group that are alive right now are known as the Yonko, the four emperors of the sea. They are some of the most powerful people in the story because of their influence as well as their combat strength, and their bounties are incredibly high. Next up we have the fraction of assassins and bounty hunters. You can say that these groups fall under the same hood as professional killers, but generally in the story, assassins do not really care who they have to kill if it achieves their goal or get them money. Examples of that would be Hayozo the Octopus Fishman, the Yeti Cool Brothers, Kelly and Bobby Funk, just to name a few. Bounty hunters on the other hand normally hunt down only people wanted by the Marines through a wanted poster, and therefore they sometimes come across as more reasonable people that are targeting other criminals. Examples for liked characters that are or were also bounty hunters include the Frankie family, Johnny, Yosaku, and even Zoro in the beginning of the story. It's arguable to call bounty hunters criminals at all, but I wanted to mention them in this group to at least showcase their connection to the underworld of One Piece, because they are often involved in that manner. The next criminal organization we are gonna mention is Baroque Works. Fittingly, they are a mix of the two previous groups, because they operate under the command of the world-renowned pirate Sir Crocodile, as well as being well known for being partially bounty hunters themselves. They also function as spies and were involved in multiple other shady activities like transporting illegal goods. They had a clear structure of ranks in the organization compiled out of many agents, with the most important ones being frontier and officer agents, with individual code names to hide their true identity. It is important to mention that this organization is no more because it was already disbanded after a crushing defeat through our protagonist Luffy. Child traffickers. Yes, One Piece tackles a lot of terrible real-life problems, and there are more of those to come. But this one regards the selling of children that have lost their parents to make a pretty penny off of it. We were introduced to Mother Caramel, who was the main figure in a terrible business of the underworld decades ago. She operated the sheep's house as a caretaker, but would in actuality sell the kids to make profits. Slave traders. A lot of the groups on this list actually take advantage of the fact that slave trading is a big thing in the world of One Piece. A lot of these organizations gather their own slaves to make them work for their means. But what I want to talk about right now is the actual group of slave traders, the people selling them to the highest bidder. Even though it was implied that there are multiple big places in the One Piece world where slave trading occurs regularly, we only know of one big auction house called the Human Auctioning House, which is located on Sabaody Archipelago at Grove No. 1. It was originally owned by one of the warlords of the sea, Doflamingo, and operated by the man called Disco. We got reminded of the existence of slave trading throughout the story at many times, with examples being the backstory of the fishmen, the Kuja pirate leaders, the people of Tequila Wolf, again just to name some of the most important examples. The next criminal organization is the Donquixote Family, also known as the Donquixote Pirates. So this time we have a group that is actually closer to an underground syndicate, but it's also called a pirate crew. They have a lot of different goals, including making money through any means, like as already mentioned before, by owning a human trafficking house, selling illegal goods, like the artificial smile devil fruits, and also being affiliates with subordinate pirate groups, like the Bellamy pirates doing the dirty work. Their structure is divided into 3 subdivisions, led by 1 army commander each. They are well connected to many other criminal organizations, and they were also ruling over the country of Dressrosa before our protagonist Luffy again destroyed another criminal organization that is now only a past memory. The 5 Families of the West. This criminal organization is maybe not too well known for many people because it was only mentioned briefly before. The 5 Families of the West are 5 big mafia groups that control the underworld of the West Blue, one of the great oceans in One Piece. Until now we were only introduced to one of those families, with the one that we know of being led by Capone Beige, who is a mafia boss now turned pirate. The 5 families did have frequent disagreements and fights that led to Beige killing multiple other mob bosses. Growing bored of his dominance is the reason why Beige's family took to the seas in the first place. What they actually did is hardly known, but when taking into account that killing rivals is always on the agenda, we can expect only the worst. The organ dealing Assassination group. We first learned about this group in the Whole Cake Island arc, where the organ dealer Jigra seeked revenge on the Big Mom pirates. One important fact about this group is that the group itself is actually not canon in the manga. The name and relevance of this organization was upscaled in the anime to make the introduction of the Charlotte brothers more interesting. Jigra, the organ dealer, is canon in the manga though, which means some sort of organization that is involved in selling organs exists either way you look at it. The black market. Calling this an organization is definitely far-fetched, because it is more of a collective of multiple criminal groups that make up the black market. There are some important characters that I have to mention though, and I thought that this is the most fitting category to put them in. Because the black market, which focuses on selling illegal goods, but has its reach into all kinds of criminal areas, is dominated by the so-called underworld emperors. We know about 6 characters that fall into this category, and right now we are gonna talk about 5 of them. First up is Lufeld, known as the God of Fortune, as well as the Lone Shark King. There is not much that we know about him, except the fact that he seems to be very wealthy, obviously in this kind of business, and that his name is implying he's involved in casino as well as lottery schemes, and also to be the driving force behind giving out loans and collecting debt by all means necessary, so you do not want to owe this guy anything. Next up is Drug Peklo, known as the Major Undertaker. Again, a character we know close to nothing about, except the fact that he seems to be the main player in the drug business. The third emperor is Umid, the Deep Ocean Current. We know at least something about him, because he's in fact confirmed to be the leading man behind shipping transports. We can imagine him transporting all kinds of goods, with no regards to their legality. We have seen one of his big transport ships in the manga with the label Umid Cargo. Next up we have Giberson, the Concealer, about which we again know pretty much nothing yet. It is very likely that his branch of the underworld is about bribery, maybe politicians, and covering up all kinds of crimes in general. Also, he was referred to as a storage unit titan and complete drunk, so maybe he's also going into the liquor kind of direction, as well as storing illegal goods in general. Lastly for this segment, the emperor we know the most about is Big News Morgan, who is the president of the World Economy newspaper. He's basically in charge of all physical newspapers in the world, and he's the head of media in the world. This man decides what appears in the papers, making him immensely influential and powerful. We are not sure yet why he's so involved in the underground, because his business does not have to be connected to criminal activities. but it's most likely that bribery for what appears in the news seems to be why he has those kinds of connections. The Pleasure District. This is where we're gonna talk about the 6th underworld emperor called Stussy, who is called the Queen of the Pleasure District. As you can imagine, this part of the criminal world of One Piece is focused on sex work and falls mostly again into the category of human trafficking. One Piece is really covering it all. Even though it is obviously not going into detail with any of those topics, the series hints at the existence of these terrible organizations that are also a problem in our real world. We do not know anything about this criminal branch except that it exists and that Stussy is involved with it. The Yakuza. The Yakuza are basically the mafia of Wano country and the prime criminal underground organization in this area. It is obviously fitting because they got their name from the real-life world equivalent of the Yakuza group from Japan, which is the inspiration for Wano country. This group is the driving force of economic gain in Wano, because they operate many casinos and even the red light district in this country. They are a violent group that demonstrates their physical power when needed to collect what they are owed, while scamming normal people out of their money. Their reputation correlates closely with the correspondent shogun who is running the country at that time. So there are times where this group is seen as criminals and times where they are actually somewhat reasonable people having their foot in shady business. The Revolutionary Army. This group is the main force that challenges the reign of the world government, and they are seen as an immensely powerful and influential group. They are mainly known as arms dealers because their ideology is about freeing countries from the chains of the world government and supply them with weapons to defend themselves without the need of protection from higher authorities. They are rebels and seen as criminals from the point of view of the Marines because they oppose their rule, disrupting the system. An interesting fact about this large group that is structured into 5 units with deputy and army commanders is that their leader, Monkey D. Dragon, who is also the father of our protagonist, was referred to as the world's most wanted criminal. This statement was made when Whitebeard was still alive with a bounty slightly over 5 billion berries, which could indicate that Dragon has a higher bounty than Whitebeard. This is only speculation though, because him being the most wanted criminal could mean many things, not related to an actual wanted poster. It could mean something like the most people in the world are after him, or something like that, and not that the reward for his capture for the Marine's sake would be the highest in the world. Germa 66. This organization is pretty special. They are also known as the Warmongers, and they are an underworld mercenary force that is being commanded by the Windsmoke family. This criminal group is actually an entire country, the Germa Kingdom, which was based in the North Blue. How is it possible that it was located in the North Blue? It is the only seafaring country because the country is built on giant snails and right now they are located in the New World. As stated before, they are a military group that is known for dominating other nations. There is even a named event known as the Conquest of the Four Nations, in which the Germa 66 overtook 4 North Blue kingdoms. They have connections to the underworld specifically because their military power does not come from natural humans, but from a giant clone army that they created through a science operation. Mads, or nowadays Neo-Mads. This is a group of the world's best scientists, including people like Windsmoke Judge, Queen, Caesar Clown, and formerly even Dr. Vegapunk, as some examples. This group has to be considered as a criminal organization because even though some of the experiments that they have conducted were harmless in nature, most of their research was going towards producing weapons of mass destruction. Even weaponry that was regarded as inhumane in wars like chemical bombs and gases were produced by this group, and they were powerful enough to be considered a notable threat towards even the world government. They were also the reason cloning was made possible for Germa 66, and they have ties to all kinds of other criminal operations. In fact, they produced Stussy, the Queen of the Pleasure District, because she is a clone and experiment of this group, just as an example. Buggy's Delivery Service. Again, a group that can be also considered basically a pirate crew, but being located at a stationary location and going above the normal doings of a pirate crew in a major way. Nowadays, the operation has risen to the status of a Yonko crew under the new name Cross Guild. The original Buggy delivery service operation was about delivering all kinds of goods, something we have already heard other groups on this list do. But after transforming to Cross Guild, they are also considered a criminal organization for the Marines because they actually released bounties on high-ranking Marines, trying to shift the balance in the world and get rid of powerful government officials by awarding random people for taking down even vice admirals of the strongest military group in the world. And lastly, yes, the world government itself. Clearly, they are the rulers of this world right now, and they would not label themselves as criminals. But I feel like you cannot really make a list of all the criminal organizations in one piece and leave out the world government. They are some of the shadiest and most corrupt people in this world, manipulating multiple countries, trying to enrich themselves, going far beyond what would be considered legal in our world. Bribery, political manipulation, human trafficking, and assassination are all a big part of this organization. So big in fact that for assassination alone they have a special branch called the Cypher Pole, divided into at least 10 different corps. They are also heavily involved in espionage. The world government makes some of their leading figures, called the Celestial Dragons, labeled as gods, who have the right to take any creature as their slave, and they also have the right to straight up commit murder on even innocent civilians if they feel like it. So they are basically the worst of the worst. I hope I did not forget any criminal organizations, but I tried my best to cover as many of them as possible. I also tried to keep talking about each of them short, because this video is already the longest one I've ever made. If you're interested in this kind of videos and you want to hear more very soon, please consider subscribing to this channel and liking the video. We are just getting started with this channel. Recaps, theories, summaries, discussions, all of the good stuff will keep coming your way on Niki Nakama. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.